Hello, my name is Susan Piver. I'm a writer and longtime practitioner and teacher of Buddhism. I've come to see that many people think of Buddhism and meditation practices associated with it, like mindfulness, as ways to reduce stress. But I would like to tell you that the Buddhist path is far more rich than that. It is a way to wake up, to become liberated from suffering. And forget about enlightenment, it's also a way to live your everyday life more fully and meaningfully. This podcast is to share with you classical Buddhist teachings that I have found enormously beneficial, and also to tell stories from my own life about how I applied and misapplied these teachings. And I do want to tell you from my more than 30 years of experience that the Dharma is real, and it provides an extraordinarily nuanced, profound, and pragmatic guidebook to living a life of wisdom, compassion, and courage. There's a famous story in the Zen tradition. A student asked a Zen master, whose name was, and forgive me if I am mispronouncing this, which is entirely likely, Jaju, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" To which the teacher replied, "Mu," transliterated from Japanese, M-U, mu. If you've ever studied Zen or read things about the Zen tradition, you might have encountered this syllable, mu, which means nothingness. So does a dog possess Buddha nature? The answer is mu. Now, what was this great master pointing to? Was he saying the dog isn't there, the dog doesn't exist, the dog has no inherent being? Well, I think the answer is mu. In the Tibetan tradition that I've studied in, this is called emptiness, sometimes also called emptiness, luminosity, inseparable. So these are profound and vast topics, but I'm going to tell you a story right now that I hope brings it down to earth in some way. My experience of mu, many years ago, I was vastly heartbroken. Everybody has had a broken heart, I'm quite sure. And if you haven't, you will. We've all had our share of relationships that have not worked out or seem to be working out, and then surprise, gone, expectations dashed, all the things. I don't have to explain what heartbreak is. However, there are some broken hearts that seem to come from a different realm. Sometimes a relationship ends. I'm talking about romantic heartbreak here. And you're sad, you're upset, you're angry, and you ruminate and you panic and you cry, and then you move on at some point. However, it appears there are some kinds of heartbreak from which one does not move on. It's not just that the relationship is over, but your whole idea of who you are and what your life was about to be or should be, what's important, all of that disappears. And the only thing that remains is sorrow and anger and whatever it is you might feel when your heart is broken. The world shatters along with your heart. And if you've ever had this experience, you sort of look around at everybody going about their business. How can you do that? How can you just go to work? How can you answer your phone? How can you go to the gym or fall asleep? These things become very difficult, if not impossible, when your heart is broken. There is nothing but your heartbreak. So one day when I was in the midst of this situation myself, I was taking the trash out because it was trash day. I wrote about all this, by the way, in a book some years ago called The Wisdom of a Broken Heart. And this story is in there. In any case, I'm taking out the trash. I'm rolling the trash bins down a little hill because my house where I lived at the time was on top of a little hill. It was in Austin, Texas. It was very hot out. It was August. And I was crying and sweating, and I had no idea where all of this moisture was coming from. But as I'm walking down this little hill with the trash bins sobbing, I'm thinking, how could he do this to me? He's probably with his new person now. They're probably laughing at me. I effed this up. if only I hadn't said this or done that or been this kind of person, we'd probably still be together. How am I ever going to fix this? I'll never find love again. Well, actually, he's an asshole, not me. He didn't deserve me. My love was too powerful and I scared him, whatever the various things that one thinks, perhaps true, perhaps not, when trying to get one's mind around heartbreak, which, cut to the chase here, y'all, that's not possible. So again, I'm taking the trash out. I'm crying. I get to the curb. I sit down between the two trash cans thinking, maybe the trash people will throw me away. Maybe they won't notice that I'm not garbage and just pick me up and toss me in the back of their garbage truck because I do not know how to begin fixing this. Where do I start? What is happening? And almost immediately upon that thought, what is happening, I had another thought, presumably, I don't know where it came from, that said, but nothing is happening right now. And for a moment, I was like, what? I looked around. Well, yeah, it was hot out. I could hear some birds. It was trash day, but no one was there laughing at me. No one was destroying my future when it came to love or anything. No one was pointing out my flaws. No one was mistreating me. No one was there. Nothing was happening. And at that point, a great experience of ease and peace and release flooded my being for about 6 seconds. And then all of the, well, what about this? And if I hadn't said that, and you're a jerk, no, I'm a jerk, that all came back. But in that moment, I realized that my mind was creating my suffering, and that if I could learn to work with my mind, I could work with my suffering. That turned out to be true. I discovered years later when I became a Buddhist practitioner, but at this point I wasn't a meditator or a Buddhist. But I never forgot this lesson. Nothing is happening right now. You could make arguments, well, my blood is flowing through my veins and it's raining outside. And okay, all of that's true too. But in this exact moment, what is happening? Mu. If you've ever taken any interest in Buddhism, you may have noticed that the tradition is associated with emptiness. There are a lot of teachings on emptiness, and we're going to talk about what that could mean in a moment. Buddhism is also famously associated with compassion. Are these two different things? Is emptiness the opposite of compassion, which seems to point to a kind of fullness of heart? Is emptiness like, I don't feel anything, it's all good, and somehow that is connected to compassion? Well, if these have been your questions, I share your questions. I think they're good questions, by the way, and I'm going to make an effort to answer them. So it's easy to assume that emptiness means voidness, and that when the Buddha and other great masters have said all phenomena are empty, they mean all phenomena are meaningless. Well, that would be very disappointing if the complete path of Buddhism was based around the truth of meaninglessness. So let's just assume, for the sake of this conversation, that that is not what was meant. Emptiness has nothing to do with being void, being meaningless, of course, or being dead or unimportant. Sometimes I get the feeling that when we in the West study the Buddha Dharma and encounter notions of emptiness, we somehow interpolate, is that, not sure that's the right word, that it means I don't count. I, Susan Piver, am empty, and therefore I don't matter. So let's just set that aside. That ideas of emptiness or egolessness, which is somehow connected there, mean something bad about me. Let's just say that's not the case. And consider that, in fact, the truer meaning is the opposite. That emptiness does not mean meaningless. It means completely meaningful. It does not mean non-existent. It means fully, completely, inconceivably existing. And that, in fact, it doesn't even mean empty. It means full. When we take the following view, you, dear listener or watcher, if you're watching the video, are empty. Okay, let's just say that's true for right now. But it doesn't mean you're not here, because there you are. It means you're empty of independent nature. So you were born. Pretty sure that's a fact. Your parents were born. They had parents. They had parents. They had a particular genetic makeup. They ate this kind of food. They moved from this place to that place. All of this resulted in you. If anyone had done anything different from time immemorial, you wouldn't be here. So you are the result of endless conditions that came before you. You didn't get here in a space capsule. So you are not separate from your parents, their parents, the food they ate, genetic makeup they brought forward, all of that. You are empty of independent existence. Another way of looking at this truth of emptiness is when you're born, your mind and your sense perceptions, the things that you're using right now to listen to this and contemplate it and respond to it, did not come preloaded with thoughts and labels and ideas and sounds and sights. Your mind was not preloaded with thought when you got here. It encountered something and responded. Your eyes did not come preloaded with images. Your eyes saw something, and then an image was named or interpreted. If you're visually impaired, you can imagine this through the ears. Your ears did not come preloaded with sound. Your ears heard and then named what we would call sound. So what I'm trying to point to here is the lack of preloaded thoughts, ideas, images, sounds, tastes, smells, all the things. Your mind encounters something and it responds. So the mind itself is not what it responds to. It is the space, apparently according to the great masters, is endless, into which sounds and sights and so on enter and are then responded to. And the way we respond, we like this, we don't like that, I judge it to be this, I criticize it for that, I appreciate it for the following. That's what we think of as our mind, that compendium of responses. And often in meditation, especially in the culture of mindfulness, which could use some work, by the way, getting a little dry, is thought to be the object of the practice. I'm going to work with that compendium of ideas and critiques and habits and so on, and I'm going to try to perfect it. Or I'm going to try to optimize it, make it work better. Okay, that's not a terrible thing to attempt. I would not call that spiritual practice, however. Rather, in the Vajrayana view, the tradition that I was trained in, the tantric view, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, the practice is to work with that space itself, pre-compendium. Now, you can't work with that space, so even that is mislabeled, because me working with me reestablishes all notions of duality. Anything I do, me, Susan Pivert, go, don't be dualistic, or please contemplate a non-duality, or stop all that dualistic thinking, young lady. I'm immediately just planting myself more deeply in the dualistic realm of this and that, me and you, me and me, even. So again, back to the culture of mindfulness, quote unquote, the emphasis seems always to be on sitting with yourself as you are, watching perhaps your mind do its funny tricks, repeat, repeat, repeat. There is some utility in that, I would say, but that is also simply a gateway to the realization, because I can't say it's an observation, which again is, I observe this. Something more full than observation could be called realization, that everything that's going on in there, everything I am observing when I meditate or watching or experiencing, stems from a ground that is empty of individual nature. It is only a response. This points to the possibility that there is no such thing as mind. So when you're sitting there meditating, working with your mind, what are you doing? Rhetorical, something to think about. So when we start to contemplate, well, what is this mind I'm working with? Where is this mind? How do I, quote, work with it as a meditator? What's working with what? Who is observing who? All of these questions are timeless. Well, I can't find it. I can't find my mind. It's not between my ears. It's not a function of my brain, I don't think. It's the part of me that responds. And if we combine this with the theory that when we're born, our mind is not preloaded with thoughts and our sense perceptions are not preloaded with sounds and sights and so on, we could arrive at the conclusion that mind only exists relationally. It does not have a separate existence. It is empty. And we can study our mind or see our mind or relate to our mind only through relating, only through relationship. It exists solely in the realm of relationality. I think that's a word. So now we come back to the second very famous quality associated with Buddhism, in addition to notions of emptiness, compassion. True compassion arises on two levels. One is called relative compassion, which means what you might think it means, being nice, being thoughtful. Doesn't mean being a doormat or a Pollyanna. Doesn't mean being super nice. It means being super awake and attuned to what happens around you, to the people around you, to your own heart, so that you can act from a place of open-heartedness. So relative compassion could mean being really, really nice. Sometimes that is the most compassionate thing. But it could also mean being really, really angry or quiet or trying to school someone in something. You don't know what it's going to mean except in the moment when it is required. You don't know what it's going to mean unless you're awake. So relative compassion, responding to whatever you encounter with the intention to be of benefit. However, there is a second form of compassion, absolute compassion, which is said to be synonymous with emptiness. So here we're coming full circle, y'all. What does emptiness have to do with compassion? Well, if you realize the truth of emptiness, of non-separate existence, you see that there is no possible way to be disconnected from others, from all phenomena. And as such, there is one heart, one mind, and that whatever I, Susie Piper, do has intimate connection and impact on you. In fact, there is no difference between me and you. Now, I'm going to go with that theory because all the other teachings that I have tested myself in my decades of Buddhist practice have turned out to be accurate. So I'm going to assume this one is too, even though I am quite far from personally realizing the truth of emptiness, therefore residing solely in absolute compassion. But the good news is you were born this way, fully connected, completely empty, not of self, not of beauty, not of craziness, not of whoever it is you turned out to be, but that ground of pure responsiveness is your birthright. Therefore, enlightenment is your birthright. Liberation from suffering is your birthright. And further, according to this theory, it's there right now. So, something to think about. But don't think too hard, because it's when we're not thinking about these things, it seems, that the truer meaning comes forth. So a question from a listener is from PJ, who says, what do you do when your button has been pushed hard? They put in parentheses. I have someone at work that is difficult. I know I play a role in the dynamic too. Many things about her irritate me. So how do you handle people or situations that take you 0 to 60 in seconds? I assume we all have these. Thanks, Susan. I really appreciate your work. Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for saying that. Yes, I have heard of this phenomena of being irritated slash triggered slash angry at certain people who continually do things that I find unacceptable. So what do you do when you're triggered, when someone makes you angry? Well, the first thing I would say is to take the advice of the American Tibetan Buddhist nun Pema Chödrön, who said, feel the feeling and drop the story. So what this means, and it's not fun, so it's not like, yay, good kind of advice, but you feel your irritation. You feel the heat or the coldness, whatever irritation feels like to you. And then you try to let go of what Pema calls the story, which is your thoughts about the feeling. Well, she's a jerk. Or why does she keep doing this? She knows it upsets me. Why do I get irritated by it? Maybe I could be a more calm Zen person. Move. Whatever it is one might think about the feelings, you could let go of all of that and instead let yourself experience the feeling. Now, for most people, that has something to do with the body. Your shoulders hunch, or you feel blood pounding in your head, or your belly gets tense, or whatever it is for you. Find that and rest with that. Doesn't mean like it. Doesn't mean, oh, maybe a Buddhist lady said if I rest with it, it'll go away. Just experience it. And when the story comes back, because it will, because we're humans, what's her fault or my fault or whatever, let that go and return your attention to the feeling. Again, for most people, it seems to have something to do with the body. But for some people, it's felt in the environment. And I say that because I am one of those people. I feel that the environment darkens or becomes heavier or something. So, okay, that's what I would pay attention to. And again, when the story comes up, her fault, my fault, let that go. You can examine it later. I'm sure there's validity to your thoughts. And just feel. Feeling is the seed syllable of the metabolization process. When we can't feel or don't want to feel, the story keeps getting louder and we find evidence for its validity, even if we're not looking. Charts and graphs come to us about why I'm right and they're wrong, or the opposite. So I want to try to relax that reflexive response to try to interpret and feeling what we feel in response, whether you like it or you don't like it, is a step in the direction of the empty spaciousness that we were talking about earlier, from which all things arise, but are not solid, always changeable, always responsive. And then, as the classic saying goes, all waveforms return to stillness. All waves return to water. It's a good analogy, I think. So thank you, PJ. I hope that that irritating person is less irritating for whatever reason. And thank you so much for your question. And if you, listener, watcher, have a question, please let me know. You can leave me a voice memo or send me an email. The ways to ask questions will be in the show notes. And that'll be fun for me to hear your question. Also fun for me to share with you a piece of music that I love or am intrigued by or have fallen in love with or am stunned by its incredibleness for some reason. And this week, I want to share with you a song from the 60s, I think the early mid-60s. It was a hit from a band called The Association, and it's called Along Comes Mary. This is a very amazing song for so many reasons. So I'm not a lyrics person. I'm a sound person. I tend to have to struggle to hear words when I'm listening to music. I hear the music and then I have to really work to tune into the lyrics that to me, they sound like sounds. But these lyrics, well, they'll jump out at a person. And I'm actually going to read some of them to you in a moment. So The Association was a band from the 60s that was associated with a musical style back then called like sunshine pop, which is like, I don't know what. Guys in leather sweaters from fraternities harmonizing and singing. That was a thing back then, mercifully limited. Although the association, they were amazing. They were great singers, harmonizers. Very, very cool to me. So Along Comes Mary was written by someone named Tandyn, Tandyn Almer, who we've never heard of, let's be honest. Tandyn Almer had quite a life, the little I know about him. At some point, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and suffered, apparently, from lack of diagnosis, lack of treatment, and was extraordinarily talented and suffered the slings and arrows of that talent, along with other things, I'm sure. In addition, he was an inventor, apparently. He invented a kind of bong for smoking dope. So, wow, Tandyn Almer. And he wrote the following lyrics. So just take a beat and listen to this. I'll just read it to you. I'm not going to sing it because I like you. Every time I think that I'm the only one who's lonely, someone calls on me. And every now and then I spend my time in rhyme and verse and curse those faults in me. And then along comes Mary. And does she want to be my kicks and be my steady chick and give me pick of memories, or maybe rather gather tales of all the fails and tribulations no one ever sees? When we met, I was sure out to lunch. Now, I'm laughing. I just love it so much. My empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. When vague desire is the fire in the eyes of chicks, whose sickness is the games they play, and when the masquerade is played and neighbor folks make jokes as who is most to blame today, and then along comes Mary. And does she want to set them free and let them see reality from where she got her name? And will they struggle much when told that such a tender touch as hers will make them not the same? When we met, I was sure out to lunch. Now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. And when the morning of the warnings pass, the gassed and flaccid kids are flung across the stars, the psychodramas and the traumas gone. The songs are left unsung and hung upon the scars. And then along comes Mary. And does she want to see the stains, the dead remains of all the pains she left the night before? Or will their waking eyes reflect the lies and make them realize their urgent cry for sight no more? When we met, I was sure out to lunch. Now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. Dudes, that's like Shakespearean to me. Who the hell wrote that? Tandyn Almer. And then it became a pop hit. Don't ask me how this happened. I just know that it did. I'm grateful that it did. And the final thing I want to say about Along Comes Mary is, wow, it has the best hand claps ever recorded. It's quite a remarkable piece of music. And if you don't listen, you'll miss it. It sounds like a cheesy pop song from 1965 or something like that. But Along Comes Mary. Now my empty cup is as sweet as the punch. What does that mean? Moo. Please enjoy listening, and I'll see you next time.
Every time I think that I'm the only one who's lonely, someone calls on me. And every now and then I spend my time at rhyming verse and curse those faults in me. And then along comes Mary. And does she wanna give me kicks and be my steady chick and give me pickle memories? Oh baby, rather got no tales from all the fails and tribulations no one ever sees. When we met, I was sure out to lunch. Now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. When big desire is the fire in the eyes of chicks whose sickness is the games they play, and when she got a name? And will they struggle much when told that such a tender touch of hers will make them not the same? When we met, I was sure out to lunch. Now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. Kids are flung across the stars. The psychodramas and the traumas gone. The songs are ever sung and hung upon the scars. And then along comes Mary. And does she want to see the stains, the dead remains of all the pain she left the night before? Oh, will their waking eyes reflect the lies and make them realize the urgent cry for sight no more? When we met, sure out to lunch. Now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch. Sweet as the punch. Sweet as the punch. Sweet as the punch. Sweet as the punch.